Hello, so today we're going to be talking about Econ and Gold in TFT. So Econ and Gold are definitely the most important resource and the most important concept that you have to learn in order to be successful in TFT. So I do a guide like this more geared towards beginner players once per set. So this is going to be the set 14 Econ guide with a couple set 14 examples to kind of get you started in understanding how important gold is and how to get the most out of your TFT experience by reducing your variance by generating as much gold as you can within a game. One more thing, please make sure to like and subscribe. So before we get started into the whole guide, I just want to say we reached our mini sub goal. So I kind of said that if I reached 8,000 subs, I would do an AMA video where I would basically just respond to a bunch of comments. So I'm going to make a comment below each of the videos for the rest of the week, and I'll read through all those replies, and then I'll make a video that's dedicated to answering all of those. They don't have to be strictly TFT related. It could be about other stuff like juggling TFT and art and doing some other stuff. I've been really busy, so this is more of like a sorry for not responding to comments as I usually do. I used to respond to every single comment, but in the past month or so, I'm really busy because I'm really far behind on art that I have to do for conventions, so I'm working on that. So instead, if you have pressing issues or pressing questions, I'll answer them through the means of this AMA video. So please look forward to that. Also, we're working towards our 10,000 sub goal RP giveaway. So if you're not already liked and subscribed, you can check out my channel and do that. And then, you know, if we reach 10,000 subs, we'll do the RP giveaway. On my channel, I'm usually doing guides similar to this one or talking about different comps. So if that kind of interests you, if you want to have like that educational TFT kind of channel in your feed, then my channel is one that can help you with that. So now let's actually talk about what's the matter at hand, which is gold generation in TFT and Econ. Econ and gold, they kind of mean the same thing, right? If you're making a lot of gold, that's kind of what you talk about when you say Econ. And Econ sometimes you use it as a verb or a noun. It just basically means generating gold. So gold in TFT is your main way of interacting with the game, and that's why it's so important. A lot of times it's a little bit overlooked in lieu of the flashy units or the augments or the other stuff, but Econ is by far the most important thing because you use it for everything in order to interact with the game. Use it to roll, use it to buy units, use it to level up. You cannot interact with the game unless you have a lot of gold, so if you're trying to have a good experience playing set 14, you need to have a lot of Econ in order to interact with the game. Additionally, it's the main way to reduce variance. If you're in a world where you have an infinite amount of gold, in TFT, you'll be able to level to whatever level you want. You'll be able to roll for whatever unit you want to roll for. Having more gold is very sometimes overestimated, sometimes underestimated, but it's very important in terms of actually being able to hit your boards and play around your units. A lot of times when you have a lot of variance, it's because you just don't have enough gold in order to properly and efficiently hit everything. And that's the thing about TFT. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a frustrating thing. It's that there is a lot of variance in the game. And if you're trying to better play around your board, be able to pivot, be able to buy different units, be able to level, be able to put in synergies, all of that requires gold. And the more gold you have, the less variance you will usually see in your games, which is why generating gold and keeping up with the lobby in terms of how much gold you have will greatly impact your performance in a lot of games. So hopefully by now you're already starting to realize it's very important, but the whole presentation is going to be talking about that importance as well as introducing Econ in general just for beginner players, just so you kind of become a little bit accustomed to what I'm talking about. So how do you get gold? It seems like it's this great, amazing thing, and we really want a lot of gold. We want to be rich in our game, hopefully rich in real life as well, but you know, it's not working out for me, so at least in the game I'll have as much gold as possible. The idea is that you get gold per round. Like, we're gonna go through all the ways that you can get gold, but you get gold per round. Just for the really giga nerds out there, it's 2 gold, 2 gold, 3 gold, 4 gold, then 5 gold, and every round subsequent after that you keep getting 5 gold, just in case you need to math it out for yourself. But roughly speaking, for majority of the game at TFT, you get 5 gold per round, no matter what. That's just like your spending cash you get per round. Then there's also interest. Interest is going to be a point that we're going to talk about a lot in this video, because this is one of the main ways of interacting and generating gold for yourself. And the idea is that you can get up to 5 gold per round through the means of interest. And getting this 5 gold per round is very essential because it is a lot of gold, and it can greatly put you in a really good spot, or if you're not generating interest, put you in a really bad spot relative to the rest of the lobby. Additionally, you get 1 gold for winning a round, and you get gold for streaking. So this is either win streaking or lose streaking, which you can get, I believe, up to 3. I think it's a little bit more than that now. It might be outdated slideshow, but regardless, usually like the larger your streak, the more gold you can get. So you're incentivized to, like, if you lose a round, to lose multiple rounds in a row. If you win a round, to win multiple rounds in a row as a mechanic of the game. Additionally, you get gold through augments and drops, whether those be like random drops or neutral round drops, like things like Krugs or some of the like mob encounters. Or you can take it from augments. Augments can just give you gold outright and just be like a gold generation thing in itself. And then there's also hacks, which we're going to talk about a little bit briefly, because hacks in a lot of cases give you extra gold, which kind of inflates this set quite a little bit in terms of like hitting those interest and econ intervals to make sure that you're keeping up with your lobby and paying attention to the fact that the hacks make a big impact on your final bottom line of how much gold you're getting. So now we're going to talk about making interest. This is a graph I made a little bit ago. So this was a graph I made like a couple sets ago. Basically what this is doing is that there's an orange line and a blue line. And the idea that I was just trying to illustrate with this picture is the orange line being somebody that is making econ intervals every single round. So, and then the blue line being a person that is not making econ intervals until a lot later. So I'll give you two hypothetical scenarios. So let's say you're a person that's playing the game and you're the orange line. You start the game off round 1. So the bottom, the x-axis here is the round number. You start with like making interest of 10 gold. So you make +1 gold of interest, right? Every turn, for every 10 gold that you save in your bank, you get +1 interest up to 5 gold. Sorry, my thing's all weird after my reset of my computer. So basically what I'm trying to illustrate here is if you start the game off and you're making 10 gold, you make 1 gold of interest. Then the next turn, if you make 20 gold, you're going to have that 1 gold plus the 2 gold, which is going to be 3 gold, right? Then you're going to have your next econ interval, you're going to make +3, then +4. Sorry, this should be a +2, +4, +5, +5, +5, +5. Basically, what I'm saying is if you start the game off and you have 10 gold in your bank, then you make 20 gold in your bank, then you make 30 gold in your bank, then you make 40 gold in your bank, and then you make 50 gold in your bank. This is approximately what your interest will look like in terms of the gold accumulated as a function of you having like your total amount of gold just from interest alone. If you, for example, don't do that and you don't make any econ intervals, the idea is that, like, you know, you're spending your gold, maybe you're pushing levels, you're upgrading units, you're holding units on your bench. A lot of times on your stage 2, you might not make econ intervals very early. This is something that happens a lot, especially if you're a beginner, because you're not paying attention too much to like the econ side of things, and you're more so paying attention to being strong and winning rounds and having your board be in a very good state. What ends up happening is you actually delay the point at which you're making econ intervals, which can then greatly affect the total amount of gold you have relative to somebody else. So here, this is a difference of 25 gold. Basically, what I did here is saying if you delay making econ for 5 turns, which is around 5 rounds is around 1 stage. So let's say on stage 2, somebody is being really greedy and you're increasing your econ every single turn. You're making 10, then you're making 20 gold of interest, then you're making 30, then you're making 40, and then you're making 50. Then you're gonna greatly increase your final threshold and get this huge amount of gold as a lead on somebody who isn't making that econ interest. Now, 25 gold, it might not seem like a lot, but it is a massive amount, right? That's 25 gold. That's like seeing 10 extra shops. That's being able to push extra levels. And this is just like a, you know, good case scenario versus a bad case scenario. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that you basically, whenever you're playing TFT, you want to speed run making 50 gold of interest, right? So basically, like if you're thinking about your game and this is like your little game right here, see this person is making 50 gold of interest. The interest is appearing on this side of the screen. I know maybe I should have done this a little bit earlier. This also your streak gold, by the way, but you're basically trying to make all of these things appear, get 50 gold as soon as possible. It's really important to make 50 gold because for every turn that you're not making 50 gold, you can think of it almost as -1 gold, -5 gold, right? So if you see here, I'm making 50 gold 5 rounds earlier than this person. Therefore, I have 25 gold because I've made 5 times 5 times 5 times, 5 times 5, which is 25, right? I've made 50 gold 5 more turns than this person. Therefore, I make 5 more gold in total. So you want to speed run getting 50, generate that bank as much as possible because it can greatly affect your total amount of gold at the end. And you might not realize this because you might be winning rounds, you might be like upgrading your units, you might be re-rolling, but if you're not ever like getting to the point of having a stable bank, you're not generating that gold. And generating the gold is really important because then you're going to fall behind, and if you don't make these econ intervals ever, you're going to fall further and further behind. These graphs are going to get further and further apart. And when somebody has such a large gold lead, they have so much resources to reduce their variance and hit the exact boards and units that they want to hit, that you're going to look at your board and you're going to be like, well, shit, that person just high rolled. I don't know what I did wrong. And in reality, a lot of times it's that they're making so much more gold than you through econ generation, through making interest. So that is all to say, make sure to make your econ intervals. So early econ is important. A lot of times early econ is way more important than late econ. The reason is that there's like this exponential, slightly exponential effect. It does bottom out because you make maximum of 5 gold per round, but there is a ramp up effect when you're playing TFT with the amount of gold that you're making. You want to ramp up and make that threshold earlier rather than later, because earning the interest earlier is going to give you more gold and give you more options. You can either roll more, hit higher cost units, you can level, you can basically afford to push levels, afford to roll down. If you don't have the econ, you lose those opportunities, you lose those options as part of your strategy, and it makes you a lot more narrow, a lot more forced, and then you're just hoping that you kind of high roll or things just fall into your lap, which they can, but it's not often. It's not a consistent thing. Early econ is always super important, and you can always postpone making econ. You could always make econ later, but if you're not getting that initial ramp up effect in order to generate the 5 gold per round, generating 5 gold per round 10 turns later is way worse than generating 5 gold per round right now, because you get so much more gold by generating the gold earlier. So you always want to make your bank and generate 5 gold as early as possible. That's generally a tip. You also want to win streak and lose streak where possible, but a lot of this is dictated by your lobby. So this is not the main way that you can generate econ. It's something you kind of have to adjust for and kind of hope for the best. You either have a really good spot to lose streak, or you high rolled and you have a good spot to win streak that you're actually going to win a lot of rounds consecutively. Additionally, as a general tip, you don't want to drop below 30 gold unless you really have to. Now, the reason I always say this, I see this in a lot of my guides. I think I made recently I made like a how to play reroll guide, which you can also check out if you're a beginner player. And I talk a lot about how important it is to stay above 30 gold. Now, why is that? Well, remember when we were talking about the econ generation, the idea is that with 30 gold, you're getting 3 gold interest, right? 3 gold of interest. And then you also get like plus 5 gold per round, which is around 8 gold. Technically, the magic number, I remember there was a viral TikTok / YouTube short. I forget who it was. I think it was Sub-Zero Arc. But basically, the magic number that you want to stay above technically is 32. Because if you take this 8 and you add it to 32, right? 8 plus 32 equals 40, right? And then 40 is your next econ interval. The reason that you usually want to stay above, you don't want to drop below 30, is because you want to be able to, on a whim, re-establish your bank of making 50 gold per possible. Because if you make 30 gold and you can easily transition that into 40 gold, now that's assuming like you're not streaking or anything. So a lot of times 30 gold is enough, because if you're making 30 gold, you're either win streaking or lose streaking, or you have like an extra bonus, or you can sell a unit on your bench. So a lot of times making 30 gold, you can easily transition to 40 gold. Then 40 gold, you make 4 per round plus the 5 per round plus whatever gold if you're win streaking. You can often easily transition to 50 gold. And then you're reestablished to making 5 gold per round. So this is where I know, like, if you watch like some people, some streamers, like some of the more famous streamers, they'll always make like, you know, they'll speak really fast and they'll say like 30 makes 40 makes 50. That's where this comes from. The idea is that 30 gold will make it really easy for you to make 40 gold, which will make it really easy for you to make 50 gold, which will reestablish you making 5 gold per round. So it doesn't turn into a huge deficit for you to drop. But when you start to drop below 30 gold, if you're at 20 gold, you have such little gold from interest that you're unable to make it back to 30 very easily. It often takes an extra round to make it to 30, which just delays you making it to 40, making it to 50, which is why it's like really risky. And especially if you drop to like true zero where you're making no interest, you don't really want to dip that low, because by the time you reestablish your bank, you're going to fall behind, because all these rounds that you're not making 50, other people are making 50, and you're going to get behind by like 20 gold, kind of like how I illustrated in the picture. So that's why a lot of times the 30 gold is like that magic number. If you want to be really technical, 32 is the magic number. But for beginners, trust me, just remember 30, stay above 30, it'll be fine. You'll be okay. That's like the general tip. So One thing that I want to talk about as well, the other way of generating gold is through lose streaking or win streaking. Ideally, you're doing one of these two things. If you win a bunch of rounds consecutively, you're getting extra gold from the win streak, or if you lose a bunch of rounds, you're getting extra gold from the lose streak. However, it's really important to understand, like lose streaking, it's very easy because obviously you just have to play a weak board. Like, you know, I'm sure everybody can play a weak board. Like you just play a weak board, you know, you pull your punches. It's pretty easy and it's usually a consistent strategy. However, it's very hard because there's a transition round, right? You have to lose a bunch of rounds, generate econ, and then win out. So typically when you're lose streaking, you basically have like plus gold, but you have minus HP, right? You're trading your HP for more gold by losing. You make econ intervals early, you generate your 50 gold earlier, so you're very rich, which reduces a lot of your variance. However, you still have to transition into playing a good comp, and you have to hope that there's not some high roller that's just going to beat you anyways. So lose streaking is really risky and is often not super great, but possible with certain comps that are really good at having a win out potential. If there's a comp that is particularly strong in the meta, then lose streaking becomes really good because you can just generate really consistent econ by guaranteeing that you lose streak. Another thing that you can do is try to win streak. This is very difficult and it's often very high roll. You can't really choose to win streak. Like, it's very rare that you can just like sit there and be like, I'm gonna win streak today. It's like, usually it's very difficult. It requires you to have a good opener or to just like hit the units really efficiently, and it often requires you to spend gold to keep your streak. You either have to push levels or you have to upgrade their units. So it's very easy to like dedicate yourself to a win streak, but you could just like lose out very easily because you spend all your gold early and then you get outscaled by other people that aren't win streaking. It's very difficult. Unless it just falls into your lap, you can't really like plant a flag and declare that you're going to win streak or anything like that. But it is a viable option if you are very strong to use that as an extra tool for generating econ very efficiently. If you cannot win streak or lose streak, it's not like the end of the world. Like if you don't 5 win or 5 loss, like to get the maximum win streak gold or lose streak bonuses, then you want to be making interest. That's the main point that I want to say. There are strategies around the two of these, and I talk a lot about it when I make guides about particular styles of comp. Something I talk about a lot is with the reroll lines, how you want to lose streak early in a lot of the low cost rerolls to guarantee that you have good components, and then generate your econ and then stabilize by rolling really efficiently on stage 3. Like, that's a viable strategy. However, if you can't do these things, then you want to make sure that you're making interest to make sure that you're keeping up with the rest of the lobby in terms of the amount of gold that you're generating. So where does econ go wrong? This is where we're going to start to have some examples. So I actually made a couple of boards for set 14, which I'm going to talk through and kind of go over, roughly speaking, like where things sometimes go wrong and some of the bigger mistakes I see, or at least hear about when people ask me for advice in these things previously in the comments from previous times I've done this video. But a lot of times econ can go really wrong and you can end up poor. So this is the option where you end up really poor. Usually it's holding too many units or holding the wrong units, either upgrading the wrong units or trying to 3-star the wrong units, pushing levels needlessly, like trying to basically force yourself to be strong or getting baited into being strong, or also taking no econ augments. So here what I'm going to talk about a lot is different reroll lines and stability with reroll. So something that's really important, or something that I see a lot of the times, let's say you're playing this line. This is a Vein Slayer line. So I have this little squiggly line here. This squiggly line is just representative of the bench. So these are the benched units, just to give it like, you know, visual clarity. So the board that we're looking at is the top board. This is just a typical Vanguard Slayer reroll where you're typically rolling for Vayne 3-star, Senna 3-star, and Jarvan 3-star. With this line, it's very expensive because if you think about the actual units that you want to hit, just in terms of how much the units cost, Jarvan is a 3 cost, Senna is a 3 cost, Vayne is a 2 cost. This unit will cost you, you know, 27 gold, right? Because it's 3 gold per Jarvan plus the times the 9 Jarvans that you need to hit a 3-star. This Senna is going to cost you 27 gold, and this Vayne is going to cost you 18 gold. So if we add up these numbers, we're looking at around like 60 gold just in terms of the actual units that you're trying to hit. So let's put that little number of 60 at the top, right? So that's 60 gold, plus you have to level to level 7 usually is when you're rolling for this comp, and then plus you have to roll. So like, assuming that you're rolling your gold, like, you know, and you see a Jarvan in every single shop, this Jarvan might cost upwards of 50 gold just in himself just to actually hit the one unit, because you have to spend like, you know, all the gold to roll and hope that you see a bunch of Jarvans in your shop, which might not even be super likely. So that is to say this board is very expensive. Something that's really that I see a lot of times happen, this isn't just with this reroll line, I'm just using this one as an example because it fits together really nicely, but if you look at this, a lot of times when you're going for your 3-star units, what's really important is to understand itemization of the 3-star units as well. So sometimes what I'll see people do is they'll hold a bunch of extra Silases on their bench, or they'll hold a bunch of extra Canes on their bench, right? So they're going to be playing this line and you have them all in the team planner, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just go for like this guy 3-star, I'll go for this guy 3-star, heck, I'll go for somebody else 3-star as well. And the idea is that if you're holding a lot of these units on your bench, you are losing econ by holding these units a lot of the time, because you know, you're losing econ intervals to hold these units typically. You are upgrading them, which makes them cost or basically waste gold, right? If you upgrade a Cane 1 to a Cane 2, it doesn't apply with 1 cost, by the way, but for 2 costs and higher, when you upgrade the Cane, he no longer sells for 6 gold. Even though you paid 6 gold for him, he'll sell for 5 gold, so you're losing econ that way. The idea is that you have to look at these units, and when you 3-star a unit, yes, they become really powerful, and yes, they can help out your board, but with a board like this, econ is really important because you need to hit these units because these are the primary units. Jarvan's going to be your main tank. If you have a Jarvan 3-star and you have a Sylas 3-star on your board, yes, it's good if you just hit him for free, if you just find the Sylases and it doesn't cost you any econ in order to hold these extra Sylases. But without items, this Sylas won't do anything. When you scale up a unit to 3-star, they get like increased stats, like they'll get more HP, they'll also scale up their abilities, they'll get stronger, yes, but the units themselves without items don't do that much. Think about it. If you have a backline unit like a Vayne and she has no items, is she going to be pumping out damage numbers that are ridiculously high? No, it's like the items is what really makes the units either become really strong tanks or really strong damage dealers. So especially in a board like this, you want to usually itemize towards these 3 units. You want to have your tank items on your Jarvan, you want to have your damage items on your backline units. If you don't have items for the Sylas, then you shouldn't be trying to upgrade the Sylas. If you do have items, like if it's like an encounter where you have a lot of items that you know you're going to have a second set of tank items, then it makes sense to 3-star one of these low cost units because you'll be able to put items on them and they'll be relevant in towards the later parts of the game. A lot of times also people ask like, should I keep rolling? A lot of times, like let's say I don't have Senna 3 and I only have Vayne and Jarvan, and it usually depends on how far away you are from the unit, but the same thing kind of applies. You don't want to be spending gold needlessly to try and upgrade certain units unless they have items or unless they're going to actually be doing something on your board. So a lot of times what ends up being better is to try and push towards higher levels to fit in synergies that actually support the units that have items. So being able to play deeper, like here I just put Renekton is a really good way to cap this board. There's also Garen and some other 5 costs, but the extra gold that you would be spending on some of these other units in order to like increase their damage output or increase their tankiness, you can just get a higher cost unit that already has better stats than them that will make up the difference anyways. Like the extra HP you get for having a Sylas 3, you would probably just get from putting a Renekton on your board. The Renekton has the HP difference that would be made up, but you also get the benefit of extra synergies and extra high cap potential for the rest of the units on your board in order to properly strengthen those particular units. One example, I want to give some other examples with rerolls just because I did the reroll guide. If you want to see more about the reroll guide, there it is, but this is kind of like a continuation that I plan to talk about here. But there's lots of other variations of boards that sometimes make sense. One example is no scout, no pivot, right? No scout, no pivot. A lot of times you do want to just roll for a bunch of units, as many units as possible. That's like your nitro board, for example, is really good with no scout, no pivot, because no scout, no pivot, remember I was saying like if you have a 3-star unit with no items, they do nothing. Well, no scout, no pivot scales them so that they have basically a mini Warmogs, a mini Rabadons, and a mini death cap on them. So it actually works out to giving them a lot of stats that makes them really potent late game. So hitting multiple 3-stars does make a lot of sense in a line like this. But a lot of times when you're playing around different boards, this is more of a reroll angle that I'm talking about, but a lot of it applies to many other boards, right? Even if you're playing 4-cost boards, if you're trying to upgrade different units, always think about which units have items on them. If you're playing towards like a deep bruiser line or a deep vanguard line or a deep bastion line, yes, it makes sense that you want to upgrade as many units as possible, but make sure to upgrade the ones that properly have items because the other ones won't really do that much. If you have a random 2-star, even a random 2-star 4 cost or a 2-star 3 cost, if they don't have items a lot of the times, it's not worth it to like push them further. It's not worth it to spend a huge amount of gold on them. That's like the general tip of where Econ usually goes wrong with a lot of games. And this applies to many different aspects of the game, because a lot of times, like, you know, you'll be playing towards this line and then you'll just be holding like a bunch of Canes on your bench and the Cane isn't your main tank, right? Maybe he does become your main tank, like, you know, that's a possibility. Sorry, I need to add another Cane. But like losing Econ to hold early units, a lot of times it's better off just selling the units, right? You just sell them, make sure that you make your Econ intervals, because then you have the Econ in order to hit the units that actually matter. And that's really important to understand which units actually matter for the comps that you're playing. That's like a whole nother discussion. You can check out my channel when I talk about these comps, because a lot of times I'll mention in those ones the stabilization points and the important units and the important units to itemize and how you should itemize them and stuff like that. But anyways, another thing that can go wrong sometimes is also not taking Econ augments. This is really important if other people are taking Econ augments. Econ is very relative. A lot of times you want to have as much gold as the rest of your lobby and keep up with the rest of your lobby. Econ augments early on, something like raining gold, like on 2-1, like having early Econ could establish your interest a lot earlier. And if you can establish interest earlier than a lot of your team, or sorry, a lot of your opponents, then you're going to generate Econ a lot faster and more efficiently. Generating that Econ is going to reduce your variance. So while the other people in the lobby, they might high roll, they might low roll, but their average rolling or their average like situation in their game, they're typically gonna be subjected to much more variance than you if you have a bunch of gold. If you have more gold and you high roll, then you can cap higher by being able to push levels. If you low roll, then you save yourself from like absolutely being devastated and not hitting anything, because you have the Econ in order to average that out. The more gold you have, the better chances you are of hitting your actual board, and having gold early is very strong, especially if you're playing around 4 cost or 5 cost expensive units, expensive comps. So Econ intervals, of course, there are bailout Econs where you can, like, you know, something like reinforcement where it gives you gold and upgrades units and stuff. These are things that can happen later in the game. It's less important later in the game because this isn't going to generate you interest. It's not going to help you as much as early Econ. So a lot of times when you look at augments or when you're evaluating augments, early Econ is something you usually can't go wrong with. It's usually generally pretty good unless you have a really good other opportunity of an augment. An early Econ augment is just going to set you up really nicely because it's going to generate you so much extra gold that's going to reduce your total variance, which is going to make it easier for you to hit your board and have a great time playing the game. Econ can also go wrong in the opposite side of things, where you're too rich or you're greeding too much. The idea is that the more you greed your Econ, the less gold you're spending on your board, and the less gold you're using to level, the less gold you're using to roll for units, the less gold you're using to stabilize out. And greeding too much can often make your margins way too thin for a win out. Basically, you're Econing way too much, or you're taking too much time, or too many augments or too many resources are invested into generating gold that you're not actually stabilizing your board, preserving your HP, and putting yourself in a good spot for a safe, like, you know, reliable strategy. So a lot of times you don't identify that you need stability, and a lot of times taking too many Econ augments might be really bad. So for example, if you take like a bunch of Econ augments, by the time you hit your board, even if you hit your board, if you take triple Econ augments, sometimes a lot of rerolls especially suffer from this, then you just run into a situation where the board is like not strong enough to beat the non-related Econ boards. And if those boards live long enough, right, if you make it to the end of the game and you're both level 9 and you both have your upgraded boards, your board is going to be inherently weaker because you won't have the augments to support your board, right? Somebody with pumping up, for example, if you take raining gold, and reinforcement and you hit your whole board, if somebody manages to survive and they have something like pumping up, preparation, and I don't know, piercing lotus, their board is just going to be inherently stronger because their units will have more stats. And if they end up hitting the units anyways, which, you know, is part of TFT structuring a plan that you can actually find a line where it's relatively uncontested, you can hit your units. If they end up hitting their units anyways, then you run into a problem because you're going to be way too weak, and that's something that can go really wrong. So you always want to try and balance your game out. If you have a lot of Econ and you're much richer than the rest of the lobby, consider stabilizing, consider trying to spend some of that gold. You can even roll a little bit on stage 3, as long as you're not breaking your 50 gold thresholds or 30 gold thresholds. Having stability and saving HP is going to make it so you have a lot more of a margin to play with that's going to give you a better chance for a win out. Sometimes when your margin's too thin, this also works against you when there's somebody with a win condition. If you look at your lobby and somebody has 2 Street Demon emblems and they're going to hit 10 Street Demon, you need to have HP, because as soon as you fight them, you lose no matter what your board is. So that's like part of identifying stability and being able to properly play around those in the rest of your lobby. One last thing to talk about with set 14 is hacks. So hacks right now, a lot of times they give extra gold. In this case, I'm showing you an augment hack. So this is one where you'll see they'll give you an option where it will say something here, and then it will give you like an extra little bit of gold, which appears at the bottom. Now, typically speaking, this is like a little bit of general gold inflation. A lot of times you want to take these augments. Sometimes like there's options where it gives you one and then it's like this and it says or, and it's like this plus this. I think those ones are a little bit more like you can pick whichever one, because typically the 2 augments are going to be a little bit stronger, but the 1 augment is going to give you more gold. I talked a little bit about this when I introduced hacks way long ago at the start of the set, but generally speaking, the ones that give you gold, you usually want to take just to keep up with the rest of the lobby. If your entire lobby is taking these augments and is generating econ better than you, a lot of times, like if you take this on 2-1, you have a lot of incentivization to just generate econ with this extra little bit of gold. So these augments are typically ones that you try to take if it makes sense for your board. Obviously, if it doesn't make sense for your board, then you're kind of screwed. You can't take it anyways, because you're gonna grief. There's no point in griefing your game just to get 4 gold. But the early gold is really important because it can help you out in order to keep up with the lobby. While the lobby is rolling and going, either hitting their boards as rerolls or leveling or buying their 4 costs, you want to be at a relatively same tempo as them. You want to have as much gold as them, because you don't want to be the one that's like really poor in a lobby where everybody's rich, because then they're going to hit their boards and you're going to have a lot of variance, and there's a good chance you don't hit your board, then you're just going to die. That's why, like, a lot of times when you have a lot of gold inflation, it often helps high rollers, because if somebody high rolls, then they have a bunch of gold, they can push levels, right? If somebody just randomly teleports to having a Twisted Fate 3 on their board, they can then use all of their gold and all of their interest to push levels, which then caps their board extremely high. So a lot of times, like, especially in the current set of the game, if you start to see a lot of these hacks where there is a lot of gold, start to adjust your strategy. If you're lose streaking, try and save HP. Try and stay above a certain threshold, because you can easily just lose out, because the people that hit their boards will have so much gold that they won't get punished. A big part of win streaking and winning and making boards is spending gold on your board. But if you just get inflated with a bunch of gold, those people are going to be a little bit stronger. I talk about this a lot when I talk about encounters. I'm going to talk about encounters again for this set, probably later this week. And with encounters like Scuttle, Puddle, or Crab Rave, that's another thing where a lot of times the high rollers typically do really well. So if you're not in a particularly good high roll spot, you want to make sure that you preserve HP, because you know that you're going to get railed in the future, because those people are not getting punished for having to spend gold on their boards to continue win streaking. But generally speaking, as a general consensus, because you're getting extra gold from these hacks, it helps you to hit those early econ intervals. Generally, try and take the ones that give you gold. If you have the one that gives you 2 options, the 2 options is typically stronger than the 1 option, so you have to debate whether or not you need the interest of gold, or if you need to take more combat power, which is offered often with the 2 augments. But either way, try and pick an augment that fits your board. Ideally, you find one that gives you the extra gold. Now, this is just going to be a rough little thing. You guys can screenshot it and keep it as a note for beginner players that maybe don't play the game as much. But these are some of the important spending rounds that you'll see in TFT. So 3-1, that's when 1 cross roll aggressively, 3-2, that's usually where 2 cost reroll is stabilized. Whenever I say a perfect interval to level, this is something that's important in TFT. You can buy EXP in groups of 4. Right? So it's plus 4 XP, which costs 4 gold. So if your number is perfectly divisible by 4, that is a perfect interval. You typically want to do that because if you're not pushing levels like much more in the future, so for example, if you're like leveling to 6 and you're going to stay on 6 for a really long time in the game, you don't want to overspill that EXP or that gold into the extra EXP. So you usually want to level on a perfect interval, because that extra gold that you would spill over if it's not a perfect interval could be gold that's used to roll, could be used that's gold that's used to establish econ intervals as well. So there's these perfect intervals, which you can just see for yourself, but basically if the number is divisible by 4, then you don't have to spend extra gold to level, and there's not like a spillover of gold, which is just more efficient. So typically that means that 3-2, a lot of people end up leveling because it's a perfect interval to level. And also additionally, from my reroll guide, 2 cost reroll stabilize there. 3-5 is another one of the perfect intervals. And usually if people are really ahead, they'll level to level 7. And then 4-2 is the big round. Pretty much every comp stabilizes on 4-2. 4-2 is a perfect interval to level. It's also the last augment. Usually, aside from certain hacks, this is the augment that you get your. This is the stage where you get your last augment. So you have perfect information of exactly what you're playing, and you have your complete understanding of everything that's going into your board. So at 4-2, that is the big decision round, and that's usually where people are going to do their main roll downs, their main power spikes. And this applies to everything. Rerollers are going to try and hit their 3 stars. 3-cost rerollers are going to try and hit their upgrades. 4-cost comps are going to roll down to try and hit their 4 costs. Very rarely do people like not do anything on 4-2. So 4-2 is like that big round that you usually consider where you're spending most of your gold. That's the big spending round. And the reason is that you want to try and match everybody else's power spike. You know, monkey see, monkey do. A lot of times it's better to be on par with other people than to travel a beaten road, because there's a lot of aspects of TFT where if you scale at the same time as other people, it's a lot more beneficial. But anyways, that's it. That's it for Econ Generation. I know we got the epic music at the end. Sorry, the playlist kind of just went into Spear Pillar. But you know, it is what it is. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it was a little bit informative. I did this as a little bit of a rendition of the previous video, and I think last time I had some gameplay videos. I don't do much gameplay in the guides. I think some people sometimes ask for it, but in general, according to my YouTube analytics, it's usually pretty bad. So this time around, I did no gameplay. If you wanted to see gameplay, then in the future, I'll try and put gameplay into these guides as well. Also, AMAs, I'm going to put the comment at the bottom of this video and just reply that comment, and should be straightforward, and then I'll answer through those comments. If you're banned, I won't see your comment, by the way. If you said anything that kind of annoyed me within the past couple of days, basically if I get a phone notification, I have to open my phone to read a comment and it's like being rude, you're probably banned. So, you know, you're not part of the AMA. But either way, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if it did help you out, and hopefully that gave you a good understanding of why Econ is super important, and hopefully you have fun getting rich in TFT. See ya. Bye bye.